Legend has it that Mark Twain once called Alton the dismal little river town. And it's very possible that he could have, because by the time that Mark Twain was traveling up and down the Mississippi River as a riverboat pilot, Alton had already seen a pretty grim history over the years. Alton is a town that has a long background of murder, death, disasters, floods, the Civil War, epidemics, you name it, it's probably happened here, and it was probably bad. So Alton has all of this history in its background, plus it's a town that is built right on the Mississippi River, which seems to attract a lot of weirdness. Some people say it's because of the water. Some people say it's because the town is built on limestone bluffs, and that has somehow soaked up some of the energy of the things that have happened. I think what it all boils down to is our history. I think the events of the past have created all these hauntings that we talk about today, and the description of Alton changed from a dismal little river town to one of the most haunted small towns in America. The Mineral Springs Hotel officially opened in 1914, but it actually got its start a couple of years before that. The property was owned by a couple of German immigrant meatpackers, August and Herman Luhr, who made a lot of money here in the area with their business and got involved in banking and real estate, and so they were probably the wealthiest men in town. Well, they had started a butcher shop on this property where the hotel would be, and they decided to expand it into an ice manufacturing plant. But when they did, they uncovered a spring on the property, and it had a lot of minerals in it, the water did, and it had a very distinct odor to it of sulfur. So they really weren't sure what to do with it. So they left the property sitting. A couple of years later, a manager at another hotel here in town, the Illini, his name was August Ratz, and he came to them with a proposal to take advantage of what they'd seen as a detriment and use the mineral water to open a European-style spa on the property. Now, mineral springs at that time were pretty popular, especially across the Midwest, at a time when people really couldn't always go to the doctor with all their ailments, and even if they did, there wasn't a lot of treatments for things like that. Especially people with rheumatism and arthritis who were in a lot of pain. It was thought and really known that bathing in mineral water would ease your ailments and ease your pain. So they started to open up all over the Midwest, and Alton became the next location for one of these spas. He convinced them to spend about $250,000 to build this hotel, which was the equivalent of about $2.6 million today. So it was a lavish and very luxurious place. He took advantage of the magical curative powers of the water by also bottling it and shipping it out to about 12 different states. The biggest use for this water, though, would be what they would call the drunk cure. And it was supposed to be able to instantly sober up a drinking man and cure your alcoholism. Needless to say, it didn't do any of those things, and that would become a problem after the hotel opened, especially because of all of the advertising they did in advance. But when it did open, the hotel became an immediate success. It wasn't until after World War II that the FDA said you can't keep telling people this will cure them because it doesn't really do anything. And that really kind of started the downward slide of the hotel, which finally ended in the late 60s when it shut down for good. History sort of passed not only the hotel by, but Alton too. The major roads bypassed the town, a lot of our industry left, and an old place like this just didn't fit into a new, faster generation of people. And it was thought they were probably going to demolish it, until a real estate developer came in and turned it into a downtown shopping mall. He fixed it up, started to move in a lot of businesses. They did what they could to try to bring back the economy, and for a while it worked. But eventually, time caught up with that too. And over the last 30 years or so, it has had a number of different owners and has been opened and closed at various times. It's open today, but it was back in the 70s when they reopened it that a lot of the ghost stories here got started. When the hotel opened, the swimming pool was sort of the heart of the building. It's what people came here to see. They came to take in the waters. They came to see what was billed then as the largest indoor swimming pool in the state of Illinois. And it was an active and busy spot. It was also a beautiful spot. Today, it's hard to tell that, but at one time it was painted. There were potted palms, tables, chairs, even a grand piano to provide music for a pool that had chandeliers above it. But it wasn't just the hotel guests. There were also people in the community who used the pool as well. Schools, orphanages, hospitals, they opened it up for swimming lessons. Anybody who wanted to learn how to swim could come here and do it, which is what got the attention of a sheet metal worker from Granite City, Illinois, named Clarence Blair. He had never learned how to swim. This seemed like a perfect opportunity. He came here and took some swimming lessons that he did not do well at. In fact, he drowned during those swimming lessons, and that became the only recorded death that we know of that happened here in the pool. But you know, the song goes that you can check out anytime you like, but you can't ever leave. Well, I think that's what's happened with Clarence. I think he's still around, and it's possible it's because he wants to be. Over the years, there have been a lot of activity reported in the pool, from the sounds of water splashing, water pouring, footsteps, strange noises, but more than anything probably is the ghost of the man who's often been seen in tan pants, a white shirt, and a tie. He seems to show up out of nowhere and disappears just as quickly. Here was a guy who spent the first 21 years of his life living in Granite City, Illinois, probably didn't do a whole lot, probably hadn't gone a lot of places, maybe even never even left Illinois, and then came here and drowned while trying to learn how to swim. Now, we come into this building all throughout the year. We bring thousands of people in, and maybe Clarence likes listening to his story being told. He likes being remembered, and maybe that's why he shows up here. Maybe he just wants to listen to somebody talk about him after all these years. Now, there is one other resident spirit here, and she's probably the most famous. Her story is the oldest. It goes back to right after they opened up the hotel as a downtown mall. It was the ghost they started to call the Jasmine Lady. Now, the Jasmine Lady haunted the main staircase in the hotel. That's where sometimes people would hear her. They would hear footsteps on the stairs, rustle of a dress. Some people claim that they saw her walking down the stairs, but the one thing that everyone noticed most of all was the smell of her jasmine perfume, this flowery, strong perfume. Even people who don't know the history of the building, don't know anything about it being haunted, would talk about coming in and smelling that perfume around those stairs. So a legend grew up around the staircase that a woman had died on these stairs, that she'd fallen to her death and had broken her neck at the bottom of the stairs. But unfortunately, there's no record of that. When we try to track anything down, there's no one that ever died on this staircase. So for years, the identity of who the Jasmine Lady might be remained a mystery. I was contacted by the owners of the building, and they asked me to show this older man around the building. He had come there to visit. The reason he wanted to see it is because his aunt had died here in the building. In fact, she had committed suicide in the hotel. I knew about his aunt's death. His aunt's name had been Pearl Sons, and she had checked into the hotel in July of 1965, and she had chosen this place for some reason as the place where she wanted to end her life. She checked into what had been this room here on the second floor. She bolted the door and then proceeded to take an overdose of a number of prescription pills. They didn't find her body for a couple of days. They couldn't get in. She bolted the door. So when they finally did get in, they still didn't know who she was. She checked in under an assumed name. Well, I explained all this to him, everything that I knew about her death, and brought him here to where it had taken place. And he sat down here and reminisced about how important his aunt had been in his lifetime and how much time he'd spent with her and how, heartbreaking it had been when she was just gone one day and wasn't coming back. Then he sort of laughed and he said, there was one funny thing though I remembered, is that every day after I had spent the entire afternoon with Aunt Pearl and then would go home to have supper, before I could eat, my mom would always make me go and take a bath. And I said, well, why? And he said, well, and then he laughed again and he said, Aunt Pearl would spend all afternoon hugging me, and then when I would come home, my mom hated it because she hated Aunt Pearl's perfume. She said it gave her a headache, and so she'd make me go take a bath. And I said, what kind of perfume was it? And he said, something flowery. I think Mom said it was jasmine. Now here was a guy who didn't know anything about the history of the hotel other than his aunt died here, but had somehow managed to solve a mystery that we'd been looking into for years, trying to find out the identity of the Jasmine Lady. And I think after all this time, we finally had.